Alright, so let's talk about the US-China trade war. For years, it's been all over the news. You hear about tariffs, you hear about negotiations, you hear about presidents getting angry on Twitter, or whatever the new angry tweeting app is this week. It's presented like a heavyweight boxing match. In this corner, the United States, reigning champ. In that corner, China, challenger, getting bigger. The bell rings. They start throwing economic punches. But here's the thing. The fight you see on TV isn't the real fight. Soybeans, steel tariffs, that's the undercard. The main event is a much bigger, sneakier battle for the future. This isn't just about which country sells more stuff. That's the simple story they feed us. Like when your parents said the dog went to live on a farm. The real story is way more complicated, and it hurts. The hidden agenda is who gets to write the rules for the 21st century. Who will lead the next technological revolution? Who will control the flow of information? Who gets to be the world's boss? A global power struggle disguised as washing machine prices. We're all sitting in the front row. Think of you and your roommate arguing over dirty dishes. On the surface, it's about the dishes. But the real fight is about respect. Who has more control over the apartment? Who has to take the trash out for the rest of the year? The US and China are those roommates. Okay, so we've established there's a secret fight club happening between America and China. But what is this trade war thing they're using as a cover? So, you tell everyone who buys from May that they now have to pay you an extra 25 cents. That extra fee is called a tariff. It's basically a tax on stuff coming from another country. But then May gets mad. She strikes back and puts her own 25-cent tariff on anyone who buys your cookies. This back-and-forth cycle is a trade war. Now why should you care about this? Because you are the neighborhood. When these tariffs start flying, the prices of everyday things go up. The cost of those tariffs gets passed down to you, the consumer. It's like when your landlord's taxes go up, and suddenly your rent mysteriously gets higher. If you ask an American politician, especially a few years ago, why this trade war started, you'll likely get a three-word answer. They took our jobs. This has been the main talking point. For decades, American companies moved factories to China, turning bustling factory towns in places like Ohio, Michigan, into ghost towns. The promise of bringing those jobs back was a powerful, emotional rallying cry. China didn't play by the rules. They kept their currency artificially low, subsidized state-owned companies. So the tariffs were framed as a way to level the playing field. The idea was to make Chinese goods more expensive, push companies to pack up their bags, leave China. But here's the twist. It's not that simple. Many jobs weren't lost to China, they were lost to robots. Automation and technological advancements have dramatically changed the factory floor. A modern factory requires fewer people but highly skilled technicians, not assembly line workers from the 1970s. Even if factories came back, they wouldn't bring the same jobs that were lost. Furthermore, the global supply chain is now incredibly complex. An American car might have parts from Mexico, Japan, and China. Slapping a tariff on one part doesn't magically create a Detroit factory. Now we get to the main event, the part they don't advertise on the posters. Forget the soybeans for a minute. The real battle between the US and China is over technology. This isn't just about who makes the best smartphones today. It's about who will dominate artificial intelligence, 5G networks, quantum computing, biotechnology, green energy. The United States has been the world's undisputed tech leader for decades. Silicon Valley is legendary. But China is catching up, fast. The Chinese government has a plan called Made in China 2025. That set off major alarm bells in Washington. The US alleges China has been playing dirty, forcing American companies to hand over technology for market access, engaging in widespread cyber theft of trade secrets. The trade war pivoted from tariffs on steel to blacklisting giants like Huawei. The fight over Huawei wasn't just about selling equipment, it was about preventing Chinese control of next-generation internet infrastructure. If one country builds the roads, they control who travels them. The fear: Chinese-built 5G networks could have backdoors to spy on data, giving China unprecedented intelligence advantage. US actions like restricting semiconductor access are calculated moves to slow China's technological ascent, a desperate attempt to keep its technological edge and preserve superpower status. To truly understand this conflict, you have to zoom out, look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about two economies, it's about two fundamentally different views of the world clashing on a global stage. For the last 70 years, the United States has been the director of the modern world. It helped create the rules. World Bank, IMF, the US dollar, the world's default currency, built on free market capitalism, built on liberal democracy, even if the US didn't always practice what it preached. Then comes China, crashing the party. China's rise, one of history's great economic stories. Hundreds of millions lifted out of poverty, not by becoming a Western-style democracy, but by creating its own model. Authoritarian one-party rule, state-guided capitalism. China doesn't want to be a character anymore, it wants to be a co-director. It pitches its model as superior for developing nations. This creates fundamental ideological clash at the heart of the trade war. The US sees China trying to change the rules. From Beijing's angle, the US looks like a declining empire designed to keep China down. China says it's reclaiming its central role before the century of humiliation. This is deeply personal. When you look past the public statements and angry rhetoric, you see what the US really wants. And no, it's not just to sell more soybeans, although Iowa farmers would appreciate that. The public wish list is clear. Stop stealing IP, open markets, reduce trade deficit. But the secret wish list is far more ambitious and goes to China's economic core. It's not just about changing China's behavior, it's about changing China itself. Washington wants China to fundamentally alter its state-led economic system. The US wants China to stop subsidizing state-owned enterprises in steel, energy, telecommunications. These giants get cheap loans and government support, allowing them to outcompete private companies. The ultimate goal? Force China to privatize these companies and let the market decide. A change striking at the Communist Party's economic control. Another item is data. In the 21st century, data is the new oil, and the US wants unfettered access. China requires data generated within China to be stored locally, a huge problem for Apple and Amazon. Ultimately, the most secret goal is slowing China's military modernization. By restricting advanced semiconductors, the US isn't just trying to win a trade war, it's trying to kneecap the technological engine powering the People's Liberation Army. Just as the US has a hidden agenda, so does China. On the surface, China's goal seems defensive. To weather American tariffs, protect factories, keep economy growing. They publicly portray themselves as champions of free trade and globalization, painting the US as unpredictable protectionist bully. They talk about win-win cooperation, shared future for mankind. But beneath this calm exterior lies steely resolve and ambitious strategic goals. The number one, non-negotiable goal: ensuring stability and survival of the Chinese Communist Party. Everything else is secondary. The trade war poses direct threat to this stability. If tariffs lead to mass unemployment, it could cause social unrest. The CCP's greatest fear. They're willing to absorb economic pain and play the long game. Beyond survival, China's hidden game is achieving technological self-sufficiency. US chip restrictions were a painful wake-up call revealing critical vulnerability. Their goal: build Fortress China, immune to American pressure. They want their own supply chains, standards, tech ecosystem. This is effectively de-Americanizing their industries. They're also reducing reliance on the US dollar. The vast majority of international trade uses dollars, giving America immense financial power through sanctions. China sees this as strategic weakness, actively promoting yuan and pioneering digital currency. This trade war isn't happening in a vacuum. When two elephants fight, it's the grass that gets trampled, and the rest of the world is the grass. Countries from Europe, Southeast Asia, Africa, all caught in the crossfire. This has disrupted global supply chains, created economic uncertainty, forced difficult choices about allegiances. It's like being a kid whose parents are divorcing and both asking, who do you love more? Take Germany, a manufacturing powerhouse counting both as top trading partners. On one hand, key US political and military ally. On the other, companies like Volkswagen and BMW sell millions of cars in China. When the US pressures Germany to ban Huawei from 5G networks, it creates impossible positions. Siding with US risks Chinese retaliation. Siding with China damages the Washington alliance. The disruption has been massive. For decades, the world built hyper-efficient global systems where products cross borders multiple times. The trade war threw a giant wrench into this machine. Countries like Vietnam, Mexico, Malaysia saw benefits as production moved from China to avoid tariffs. However, this shift is costly, chaotic, and often just moves the problem elsewhere. It's forced rethinking of manufacturing, pushing toward more resilient but expensive regional supply chains. The world is splitting into two spheres, one around the US and allies, one around China. So where does this go? Will the US and China hug it out, sign a deal, go back to the way things were? Don't hold your breath. As we stand in 2025, this isn't temporary. It's long-term systemic rivalry. Fiery rhetoric may cool, tariffs might be negotiated for political wins, but underlying tensions over technology, global influence, national security are here to stay. This is the new normal. The era of easy cooperation is over, replaced by managed competition. What we'll likely see is not all-out economic war but persistent low-grade conflict. Less hot war, more tense strategic standoff. Both sides realize full decoupling would be catastrophic, so instead, they'll focus on de-risking. Semiconductors for the US, food and energy for China, while continuing trade in less sensitive goods. It's delicate balancing, competing fiercely in some areas while cooperating cautiously in others. The technology battle will intensify. The US will use export controls to slow China's AI and quantum progress. China will double down on technological self-reliance. This will accelerate tech world splintering. You might choose between a phone working on American-led internet and Chinese-led internet. It's a future of walls, not bridges. This story doesn't have a clean ending, no victory parade, no treaty solving everything. This rivalry is now a defining feature of the 21st century. Best case, both sides learn to manage competition responsibly with guardrails preventing outright conflict. They'll continue circling each other, testing weaknesses, pushing for advantages, jockeying for position as the world's leading power. The US-China trade war wasn't the start of the end. It was just the end of the beginning of a much longer, more complex global saga.